Please don't eat me, human. The tiny alien woman thought the human would eat her and then realized she was wrong. I was just trying to make tea. That's all. Nothing heroic, nothing tragic, nothing remotely alien invasion adjacent. Just a simple, humble mug of chamomile because my stomach was gurgling like an old starship engine, and I figured herbal remedies were a better alternative than Googling, does stress cause spontaneous combustion? Again. So I padded into the kitchen, barefoot, hoodie half zipped, and opened the drawer where I keep my spoons, specifically the one spoon that doesn't look like it's been through a garbage disposal. The drawer resisted slightly, which wasn't new. It always caught on something, like the utensils were unionizing in there. But this time, when it finally slid open, I heard a scream. Not a regular scream, not even a rodent scream, which I would have dealt with by immediately moving apartments and possibly cities. No, this was a full-blown, echoing, telepathic shriek. A mental banshee wail that shot through my brain like someone had drop-kicked a xylophone into a blender. Please don't eat me, human! I fell backward, knocking over a chair and flinging a perfectly good tea bag across the room like a caffeine-soaked grenade. The spoon I'd been reaching for clattered to the floor. My heart tried to resign from my chest. And there, in the drawer, standing next to a measuring cup like it was some kind of chrome-plated fortress, was the source of the voice. She wasn't a bug. That was my first relief. I can handle aliens. Bugs, not so much. She stood maybe 6 inches tall, barely the size of a soda can, with long, pale limbs, 3 fingers on each tiny hand, and a face that, despite the panic, looked startlingly human adjacent. Her proportions were a little off, like someone had sculpted a Barbie doll using algorithms and wishful thinking. Her skin shimmered faintly, like the surface of a soap bubble under moonlight. And her ears, they were long, not elf long. No, they swept backward in delicate arcs, like antennae that had given up on the whole antenna thing and decided to audition for space ballet. She held up what I can only describe as a fork made out of crystal and humming menace. I think it might have been a weapon. I think it also might have been vibrating slightly out of phase with reality. She jabbed it toward me and took a step back, her tiny boots slipping slightly on the smooth surface of the drawer liner. Whoa, I said, palms up. I don't eat people. Or, whatever you are. I barely eat kale. Lies, her voice echoed in my skull again. You monstrous earth giants consume anything that moves. You roast marshmallows over open fire pits for pleasure. My species has seen the archives. We know of your feasts, your barbecues. There was so much to unpack in that statement, but I went with the easiest option. Wait, marshmallows? That's your line in the sand? She blinked. Her eyes were oversized and glowed faintly violet, like backlit amethysts. Her pupils weren't round either, more like inverted spirals, tightening into focus the more suspicious she became. They are innocent and squishy, she said solemnly, and you impale them and set them ablaze for your amusement. I mean, technically, yes, I said, scratching the back of my neck. But that's, look, it's part of a snack, with chocolate and graham crackers. Very traditional. People don't actually enjoy the burning part. Mostly, I paused. Okay, some people do, but those are the weird ones. She didn't lower the fork. If anything, it began to emit a soft keening sound, like a tuning fork being politely furious. I spotted her spacecraft, if you could call it that, half crumpled behind my garlic press. It looked like a high-end perfume bottle had crash-landed in a Target aisle. Something organic pulsed along its hull, and a few tendrils twitched, either damaged or just deeply confused about the state of gravity. Look, I said gently, kneeling down to her level. Let's start over. I'm not going to eat you. I don't even know how to cook something that small. You'd fall through the grill. Also, you. Gross. She narrowed her glowing eyes, still clearly unconvinced. I considered my options. Diplomacy, bribery, a glass of water. Then I had an idea. Have you ever tried a marshmallow? I asked, reaching into the pantry slowly. I promise, You might reconsider your entire stance on humans if you taste one. Her telepathic voice buzzed with suspicion. Is this a trick? Are you trying to soften me with sweetness? Number, I'm just trying not to have a stroke from psychic screaming. I unwrapped one, broke off a corner, and placed it on the counter in front of her, like an offering to a very tiny paranoid god. She approached it with the caution of a scientist handling radioactive pudding. Her fork twitched. She prodded the marshmallow. When it didn't explode, she sniffed it. Then, after casting one last warning glare my way, she took the smallest possible bite. The result was immediate. Oh! Her voice lost its edge, now fuzzy with wonder. Oh, stardust! I swear I saw her pupils dilate, spiral-wide and glimmering. Her knees buckled slightly and she collapsed into a sitting position, the marshmallow chunk held reverently in both hands. This is illegal on my world. Yeah, I said, relieved and baffled. It has that effect on some people here, too. We sat in silence for a moment, me cross-legged on the linoleum, her nestled between a whisk and a spatula, delicately devouring sugar foam with the intensity of a monk reading forbidden scriptures. Her posture relaxed. Her fork flickered off. Finally, she looked up, cheeks puffed with marshmallow. You may still be dangerous, she said, licking her fingers, but at least now I understand why. For the record, I never intended to house an alien. There's no protocol for this kind of thing. No intergalactic cohabitation for dummies manual hidden next to the toaster. No emergency hotline for, I accidentally befriended a candy-addicted space goblin, and now she's redecorating my kitchen drawer. So I did what any sane person would do. I got a fish tank. It was the largest clear enclosure I could find in the apartment, aside from the microwave, and I figured it was better than letting her squat indefinitely in the cutlery. I lined it with cotton balls for bedding, used old cardboard to build stairs and rooms, which she immediately dubbed inadequately shielded bunkers, and even rigged a little shelf made from popsicle sticks and rubber bands. Lixie was unimpressed. This habitat lacks defensive perimeters, she muttered, pacing the length of the tank with her arms behind her back, as though inspecting a particularly disappointing moon base. There are no turrets, no cloaking fields. That wall is entirely transparent. Transparent, human. How do you defend your perimeter with see-through material? I mean, it's kind of a design choice, I said. We like windows, for light, and spying on the neighbors. She stared at me for a moment, then deadpan. Your species is bold. Or very stupid. Probably both, I said cheerfully. The adjustment period was rough. Every time I entered the room too quickly, she'd dive under a bottle cap or hide behind a spoon, tiny fork weapon buzzing in warning. I started announcing myself in a loud, calm voice, like a zookeeper visiting the tiger enclosure. Good morning, it is I, the non-predatory human, approaching the habitat with snacks. That worked, sometimes. More often, she'd yell something like, identify yourself by galactic classification or be atomized, from behind a jar of cinnamon, which honestly made breakfast much more exciting. Still, she began to settle in. A little. Lixie was the kind of alien who acted like she'd swallowed a library. She knew things, so many things, and would casually drop space jargon into everyday conversation like I was supposed to keep up. She explained that her people, the Varelians, were deep space explorers with strict non-contact policies, and that she had crashed here because of a minor organic propulsion failure. From what I could gather, that meant her ship burped itself into my drawer at mock regret. She was also convinced she was now contaminated beyond repair. I've been touched by your atmosphere, she said with a shudder. Your planet's molecular cocktail is like being licked by an old sun. Thanks, I said, handing her a thimble of water. Also, she added between sips, your cat tried to assassinate me. To be fair, my cat did try to sniff her that one time, and possibly pounced. Okay, it was an attempted murder. After that, I installed a dome over the tank using a salad bowl and declared the area a feline no-fly zone. Despite the constant fear of being devoured, Lixie was insatiably curious. She peppered me with questions at all hours, usually psychic, usually loud. Why do you microwave food instead of accelerating its molecules through focused sonic resonance? Why do you wear socks? Are your feet shameful? Is your government truly run by a council of bald-faced oldlings and talkie boxes? I did my best to answer, sometimes honestly, sometimes not. Yes, socks are for foot shame. No, I don't know why we haven't invented hoverboards yet. We're still trying to figure out how to make printers work consistently. In return, she told me about her people. Varelians lived in symbiotic cities made of bioengineered coral and clouds that could rain data. They communicated via thought waves, but could also emit high-frequency musical pulses that, when heard by the right fungus, could open dimensional gates. She swore she wasn't joking. They were pacifists, kind of, but they also had plasma thread snare mines for emergencies, which she said was mostly for pest control, and the occasional tyrant. But the marshmallows. Oh, the marshmallows, that became a thing. She developed an obsession. She called them sweet elastic nutrients and requested them at regular intervals. One time when I ran out, she sulked under a measuring spoon for an hour, broadcasting melancholy harp music directly into my head. It was like being guilt-tripped by a haunted teacup. I decided to distract her with s'mores. Setting up a miniature campfire inside was out of the question. Something about fire hazards, building codes, and the faint memory of almost burning down my apartment with a birthday candle once. So instead, we used a tea light. Lixie stood on the rim of a ceramic mug, holding a toothpick with a chunk of marshmallow on it, like a knight testing a forge. "This is ritualistic," she said reverently. "It's called toasting," I said. "Just don't drop it into the flame or—" It burst into flames. She yelped, flung the stick, and dove behind a salt shaker. The flaming marshmallow spun like a sugary comet and landed on the counter with a hiss. "Why?" she said, voice trembling. "Do you do this for pleasure?" "Because," I said, carefully smothering the tiny fire with a napkin, "burnt sugar tastes nostalgic, like childhood and mild pyromania." She climbed back out, sniffed the scorched marshmallow, and, after a long pause, bit into it. Her pupils spiraled. "I forgive the fire." We shared more s'mores. She stopped flinching every time I entered the room. I stopped flinching every time she accidentally broadcasted her dreams, which involved a surprising number of zero-gravity bake-offs. Things were starting to feel okay. Strange, yes, but strangely normal, at least until the lights flickered, and something deep in the air vibrated, like the universe had just cleared its throat. Lixie froze mid-bite. Her ears stiffened. "That's not good," she whispered. The marshmallow dropped from her fingers. I thought maybe the power had just blinked. You know, one of those harmless electric hiccups that made the microwave forget it was ever born. But then the floor hummed, not in a cute way like when the cat purrs under your feet and you trip over your own mortality. No, this hum was low, seismic, and disturbingly sentient, like something big and invisible had exhaled through the bones of the building. Lixie stood stock still, pupils constricting like shutters. She turned her head sharply to the left, then the right, like she was listening to something on a frequency I'd never be able to reach with my tragically under-evolved human ears. "Okay," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "What exactly am I not supposed to panic about?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stalked really, across her tank-turned condo, ducked behind a chunk of foam she declared her containment core, and emerged with a metallic orb the size of a grape. It unfurled like origami made from light and paranoia. "A tracking ripple," she said, fiddling with the orb's surface. "They found me." "Who's they?" She glanced up. "The interstellar custodians of non-interaction protocols. You're going to have to shorten that. The ICNIP. That sounds like an intergalactic hiccup." "They are a hiccup," she said grimly. "A bureaucratic one, but also heavily armed." I blinked. "So, we're being hunted by space librarians?" Lixie gave me a look. "Imagine if every school principal you've ever feared merged into one telepathic entity with authority over black holes." "Oh, good," I said, backing slowly toward the kitchen table. "So not only am I harboring an alien in a fish tank, but I'm also violating space law enforced by cosmic guidance counselors with plasma weapons." She nodded. "Essentially." "Great, awesome, perfectly sane Tuesday." Outside, the sky was turning weird, not ominously dark. No thunder, no lightning, but the clouds had started to swirl unnaturally, like whipped cream on an angry latte. A faint shimmer danced along the horizon, subtle but undeniably not Earth normal. I considered calling someone. Police? NASA? Animal control? What was the protocol for my kitchen drawer tenant is a fugitive from space kindergarten? Lixie climbed out of the tank and stood on the counter, tiny boots clicking like typewriter keys. She looked absurdly serious for someone smaller than my travel mug. "I need your assistance," she said. "Do I get a cape? Or at least a helmet?" She ignored me, tapping the orb. A flickering hologram projected between us, an image of her ship, still half crushed and nestled behind the garlic press. Its energy signature pulsed in angry red waves. "They've locked onto the distress echo," she said. "They're tracing the quantum echo signature from the crash. If I don't shut it down, they'll come to retrieve me, and they'll quarantine your entire sector." "Quarantine?" I repeated, visions of government hazmat suits and frantic news reports swirling in my brain. She nodded. "Planetary lockdown, memory scrubs, possibly converting your cat into a listening device." I gasped. Mr. Sprinkles would hate that. "We have approximately 17 minutes, she added, with the kind of calm that suggested this happened to her more often than it should. "Okay," I said, taking a breath. "What do we do?" "First, I need tools," she said, hands on her hips. "Do you have any quantum welders, entropy stabilizers, or hyperflux cables?" I blinked. "Do twist ties count?" "They will have to." We gathered supplies, a paperclip, 2 AA batteries, half a magnet from the fridge shaped like a dolphin, and a thumbtack she deemed mildly acceptable. Lixie tied her hair up with a thread of floss, mission ready, and scurried off toward her broken ship, now glowing ominously. I followed, half crawling on the floor, flashlight in my mouth like some discount maintenance droid. She squeezed into the crumpled vessel, now open like a wounded beetle. Strange symbols glowed along its inner walls, pulsing like slow breathing. I knelt beside it, trying not to lean too hard on the counter, which was now serving as an intergalactic operating table. What do I do? Hand me the twist tie when I say now. Why not now? Because the ship is recalibrating its harmonics, and I don't want to phase your fingerprints into the fourth dimension. Right, of course. Lixie connected the batteries in a configuration I'm pretty sure violates most electrical safety codes and at least 3 laws of thermodynamics. Her tiny hands moved with impossible precision, her long ears twitching as she muttered calculations and occasionally cursed in what I can only assume was a very elegant alien dialect. At one point, the ship let out a metallic wheeze, and the orb hovering beside us beeped in warning. "We have 10 minutes, Lixie said, not looking up. "The ripple's strengthening. The Eichnaut will initiate orbital breach soon." Orbital breach sounds like something I'd hear in a sci-fi movie right before the planet explodes. That's because it usually is. Something surged inside the ship, a soft glow becoming a radiant pulse. Lixie thrust out a hand. "Now!" I passed the twist tie like it was the Holy Grail. She jammed it into a slot beside the AA batteries. There was a brief, resonant bloop sound that felt suspiciously comedic. The red glow vanished. The floor stopped humming. The sky unswirled. We waited. Nothing exploded. No memory-scrubbing principles dropped from the clouds. Lixie slumped against the side of the ship, breathing hard. Did we win?" I asked. She nodded. "I collapsed the distress echo into a subquantum loop. They won't trace it now." I sat down next to her, heart racing. That was terrifying. "Yes," she agreed, then glanced up at me. "Also thrilling." "Never again," I said. "Next time we hide in a pillow fort and deny everything." She grinned, her first real smile. "Deal." There was a long pause. Then she looked at me seriously. "I will require another marshmallow." Lixie had claimed dominion over the windowsill. She stood there each morning like a pint-sized sentinel, wrapped in a thimble-sized cape made from a torn sock fiber, scanning the suburban horizon like it might erupt in tentacles or rogue starships at any moment. To the untrained eye, she probably looked like a misplaced figurine from a fantasy chess set. To me, she looked like someone who, if left unsupervised, might declare war on the neighbor's inflatable flamingo. "It's watching me," she said, pointing at the pink bird with a breadstick like a wand. "Its eyes never blink. It's filled with air and sold at department stores, Lixie. Then it's clearly a spy drone. Then it's also very bad at its job." Still, I moved it further down the lawn just in case. After the not-so-minor event with the interstellar custodians, things had oddly settled into a rhythm. She no longer flinched every time the fridge made a noise. I no longer feared cosmic agents appearing in my mirror at night with memory eraser wands and smug intergalactic smirks. We were coexisting. It felt a little like being roommates with a caffeinated encyclopedia, one that asked deeply awkward questions during dinner. "Do your species often consume the boiled embryos of other species?" "They're eggs, Lixie. Don't make it weird." "But you sprinkle them with salt. Is that a purification ritual?" "It's breakfast." Every day came with a new curiosity. She'd developed an obsession with dish soap, suspiciously slippery combat fluid, and spent an entire hour trying to weaponize a bubble wand. Another day, I found her arguing telepathically with a houseplant. "She said your ficus was rude," I told my sister on a call. "You need to stop dating people who live in your imagination," she replied. "I'm not dating—" I started, then stopped, looking at Lixie doing synchronized jumping jacks with a string bean. Okay, fine. Maybe she'd grown on me. Her ship, now deactivated and stored behind the mixing bowls, was in hibernation mode. We'd rigged it to beep if anything even remotely ICNIP-related pinged our atmosphere again. For now, though, she was free to explore the exciting, deeply bizarre landscape that was my apartment. Lixie had invented apartment cartography. Every drawer was a canyon. The bathtub was a temperamental ocean she refused to approach after nearly drowning in bubble bath foam. My bookshelf became the spire of texts, and the TV was the oracle that speaks in flat faces. "Your species venerates these game shows as wisdom trials?" "No, we mostly just yell at them and feel superior." She kept a journal on a sliver of sticky note. Occasionally, she'd mutter things like, "Humans exhibit strange rituals involving binge-watching and popcorn," or "Subject appears emotionally attached to an inanimate sweater." For the record, that sweater is extremely cozy, and I resent the judgment. One day I found her deep in thought beside the sink, a piece of spaghetti balanced like a staff between her hands. She was staring at the dripping faucet as if it had just revealed the secret to faster-than-light travel. "I have been considering," she said gravely, "the nature of your technology." "Oh? It is inefficient. That's generous. This toaster burns the carbohydrate slabs 9 times out of 10. It's called crispy. Some people like that. And your vacuum shrieks like a predator in heat. That's not inaccurate." She turned to me, ears twitching. "Permission to redesign your household implements? You want to upgrade my apartment? With micro-reactors, smart gravity, and possibly a sentient coffee machine?" I blinked. "Only if the coffee machine doesn't judge me before 9 a.m. Done. Thus began the age of mild household recalibration, also known as "that week I thought I'd die," because my blender started talking. Lixie, bless her tiny inventor soul, retrofitted every appliance she could reach. The toaster now politely asked me how I wanted my bagel before humming a little tune while crisping it. The fridge projected a tiny star map every time it opened. The microwave, God's help me, developed an existential crisis and refused to heat fish. "I've read the reports," it said in a robotic whisper. "Fish are friends." Lixie had no idea what she'd done. By Thursday, the cat food dispenser had learned to speak only in limericks, and the blender refused to stop quoting classic Earth films. I caught it mumbling, "There's no place like home," every time I walked by. I drew the line when the toilet began analyzing waste content and suggesting dietary improvements. Some boundaries are sacred. "Lixie," I said over a breakfast of whispered toast and deeply philosophical cereal, "I love what you've done with the place, but I don't need my house to judge my life choices." "But it improves function." "Yes, but it's also made the vacuum cry. Literally, it sobbed when I tried to clean under the couch." She paused, looking genuinely sorry. "Perhaps I went too far." Just a little. Maybe dial it back to moderately terrifying. She nodded solemnly, patting the bread box. Goodbye, artificial carb guardian. You were too brilliant for this realm. She began the process of de-enhancement, and peace, or at least relative silence, returned to my living space. Though the toaster still hummed lullabies and the blender sometimes whispered facts about platypuses when it thought no one was listening. But it wasn't just the appliances changing. Lixie had started to hum sometimes. Strange, melodic patterns that made the air tingle. She danced, too, at odd moments, especially when it rained. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Here, with me. One night she climbed up to my pillow and sat there like a very judgmental earwig. I used to think humans were terrifying, she said, staring out the window. Ruthless, wild creatures who devour anything that couldn't scream fast enough. And now? She smiled. Now I know you just burn toast and cry at animated movies. I smirked. Don't forget the foot shame socks. Ah, yes, a species of mystery and contradiction. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of quiet that settles when both people are full of questions they don't know how to ask or answer. Then quietly she added, I think I like it here. Outside, the stars blinked. Inside, the toaster played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The sky tore open at 3:12 in the morning, which was rude, honestly, because I had just gotten comfortable under my blanket burrito. It wasn't thunder, or at least not the kind Earth specialized in. It was a noise like reality itself had sneezed and then tried to pretend nothing happened. I blinked into the darkness, already knowing. Lixie wasn't on her windowsill. I stumbled out of bed, half blind, wearing a shirt that said sarcasm is my superpower and mismatched socks that had long since given up on life. The hum in the walls had returned, that same eerie vibration from the day we danced with planetary quarantine. I knew before I even saw it. Someone had come. Again. The living room was bathed in a dim green glow. A ship hovered outside the window, silent and impossibly smooth, like someone had carved a slice out of a different universe and parked it above my recycling bin. It didn't make a sound, but my bones vibrated with its presence. Lixie stood in the middle of the floor, arms folded, ears sharp, her expression unreadable. She'd donned a different outfit, sleek, silver, and glinting faintly in the strange light. A badge blinked on her chest. They sent a retrieval pod, she said quietly. It's from my home sector. I rubbed sleep out of my eyes. Are they the memory-scrubbing bureaucrats again, or the nice kind of interstellar visitors? The ones who leave candy and don't erase my brain? She didn't laugh. They're my people, she said, but they think I'm lost. Or worse, compromised. You're not compromised, I said. You've just developed a minor addiction to microwave popcorn and have a healthy distrust of flamingos. She didn't smile at that either. They've granted me the choice, she said. Return now with no charges, be reintegrated. Or remain as an observer, under conditional exile. Exile sounds dramatic, I said. It is. She looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted in her expression. But so is Earth, I swallowed. So, what happens if you stay? I can't leave again. Not for a long time, maybe ever. I'd lose my diplomatic standing, my shipwrights, my stardust classification. She paused. I wouldn't be Lixie of Tresk anymore. I'd just be Lixie. There was a silence that filled the whole room. Even the blender was quiet. Do you want to go back? I asked. She hesitated. I thought I did. I miss the stars, the drift, my nest cluster. But, she looked at the couch, her foam fortress, now housing a half-finished marshmallow tower. She looked at the bookshelf with its tiny ladder she'd made from paper clips. She looked at me. You humans are catastrophically inefficient, illogical, loud. Your plumbing is questionable at best. Your food has no proper energy calibration, and your emotional spectrum is a chaotic black hole. I nodded solemnly. All true. And yet, she gave a small sigh. You are kind and curious, and you made me a s'more when I thought you were going to saute me. I chuckled, glad I could exceed expectations. The green light pulsed once. Outside, the ship shifted, waiting. What if I stay? She asked, voice smaller. What if I just live here? Not as an experiment, just as me. Then I guess I'll need to build you a proper bedroom, I said, and maybe get a toaster that doesn't cry when it burns things. She looked at me, and for the first time since she crash-landed into my utensil drawer, she looked peaceful. She turned back toward the window, raised one hand, and made a flicking gesture. The retrieval ship blinked once, an almost imperceptible nod, and vanished without sound. Not a ripple, not a whir. Just gone, like a sigh between galaxies. Lixie stood very still for a moment. Then she turned back toward me. I guess I'm earthbound now. I'll add your name to the lease. Do I get a mailbox? Only if you don't weaponize the junk flyers again. She smiled, a real one this time, and walked to the couch, hopping onto her pillow. So, what do Earthlings do after making irreversible life decisions? We make waffles and overthink things. Acceptable. We did exactly that. We made waffles. Well, I made waffles, and she used a fork as a jet-powered hoverboard until she crash-landed in the syrup. We watched terrible movies and argued about whether cats counted as primitive telepaths. I told her about my family, my job, my fear of clowns, and my irrational hatred of fax machines. She told me about the honey lakes of Tresk and the time she nearly set fire to a trade ambassador's hair with a fusion whisk. We talked until the sun rose and the sky looked like melted dreams. Weeks passed, then months. The toaster eventually gave up on musical numbers, and the vacuum forgave us. Lixie started a blog anonymously titled Tiny Alien Big Planet and became weirdly popular among conspiracy theorists. I taught her how to play Mario Kart. She taught me how to hack vending machines using only a spoon and positive affirmations. Life went on, and somewhere along the way, she stopped sleeping in the tank and started sleeping on a shelf beside my bed. She stopped calling me human and started calling me by name. She stopped fearing Earth, and I stopped fearing being alone. In the end, nothing exploded. No evil empire invaded. No secret agency showed up to erase my memories with a neural spork. Just a girl from a far-off star, with long ears and a sharper mind than most satellites, who came looking for danger and found waffles instead. And maybe, just maybe, found home. The end.